I'm Richard.
And I'm Will.
And together we're
The Irreverent Nerds. Bum, bum, bum.
Nerds.
Nerds.
Nerds. Nerdettes. Assorted nerd persons of all ethnicities, of all backgrounds, of all languages, of all cultures. You name it. You're welcome. Hey, so I just had a thought. We're creeping up on what might be the end of our podcast, but at the very least, we're creeping up on 100 episodes. While I'm thinking about it, I'm going to take a minute here. Oh, Will, how you doing, by the way? Will's
I'm
here,
tired
guys.
but good. Tired but good.
So I want.
I had a phone call a second ago, so I declined that, but I wasn't sure what you just said.
Well, I'm getting ready to. I've never done this before, other than just mentioning a few things in passing. But I'm going to read a list of all the countries where our listeners are from. Like now, some of these might literally be one person from that country listened to an episode once, potentially. It's hard to say exactly. But yeah, I want to break this down. It's pretty cool, actually. So let's see. We have 72%, no surprise, of our audience is from the United States. Coming in number 2, 6% of our audience is from India.
Wow.
4% from Singapore, 2% from Germany, the United Kingdom, and France, and the Czech Republic. Each of those a 2% share. Then everybody else is at 1% or below, but there's a lot of countries listed here. We got Mexico, Canada, Italy, Kenya, Australia, Philippines, Spain, Brazil, South Africa, Japan, Austria, Portugal, Poland, Israel, Denmark, Malaysia, United Arab Emirates, Nigeria, Tunisia, Thailand, Ghana, Hong Kong, Russia, Latvia, Netherlands, Peru, Turkey, Uruguay, Croatia, Norway, Egypt, Lebanon, Argentina, New Zealand, Haiti, Republic of the Congo, Belgium, Senegal, and Vietnam.
You're giving me Animaniacs flashbacks.
Yeah. Yes, it's Animaniacs.
That song where he lists all the countries.
It's pretty cool. And our top 3 platforms as of right now are Spotify, and let me see if this is all time. I think this is all time. Spotify, Apple, and Amazon Music are our top 3. And Google Podcast is kind of way down the line. Bullhorn is actually, which I'd never heard of until it popped up one day.
Bullhorn?
Bullhorn. Yeah, it is a podcast app. But yeah, I'd never heard of it, and it popped up on our analytics. I'm like, what is Bullhorn? But apparently 10% of our listeners come or they listen to us through Bullhorn. So hey, Bullhorn listeners, welcome. But yeah, we don't have a big audience, but like the core of our audience is, no surprise, middle-aged men, 35 to 54, or excuse me, 35 to 44. So that's the bulk of our audience is men like us, men like you and me. It doesn't spell out ethnicity there, but just our age range. And then well, it's primarily men, I should say. Genders, like, we're predominantly men. We don't appeal to that many women, apparently. We appeal to our wives, and that's enough, right? So that, but no, then our second biggest share is
Yeah.
And again, predominantly men, but some women as well, and some non-binary also. But
Sometimes I appeal to my wife.
age,
Go ahead.
ages 23 to 27 is our second biggest age group. And then the rest are scattered between 28 and 59, and with a tiny percentage below 22 and a tiny percentage above 60. But yeah, the bulk are middle-aged people, predominantly men, like us, middle-aged men. Big surprise, right? But yeah, to all of our listeners out there, thank you so much. I'm going to read our current. This was spontaneous, by the way. I did not plan this, but what the heck? So our current top 5 episodes of all time, as of right now, ranking by plays, and I'm not going to tell you what the plays are, but I'm just going to tell you the top 5. So we have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is our number 1 episode by far. My Hero Academia is number 2. Coming in a close third is Rurouni Kenshin. Number 4, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So Spider-Man's hitting the top 5 twice. And then number 5's rounded out by our review of the anime Sonic X.
Wow.
So yeah, that's our. Actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, that might not be the true number 5 because I do believe Goku, Vegeta, and the Dragon Balls, our first episode on Dragon Ball, actually is number 5 because we released it in 2 formats, both video and audio. And when you combine the views and listens together, I think it is higher than Sonic X. So that probably is the actual number 5. So that would be Goku, Vegeta, and the Dragon Balls. So 3 anime episodes and then 2 Spider-Mans. That rounds out our top 5 of all time so far. We got a few episodes remaining at the very least. But yeah, that's kind of an overview of who's listening, and wherever you're listening from, thank you for checking out our podcast, and we hope you've enjoyed it. And even if 100 is truly the end of this journey, we thank you for coming along with us on it. And without further ado, though, let's get into the reason we are here today. Will, what are we talking about today, man? How are we finishing out Miyazaki month?
NFTs. I'm kidding. I got this weird message. Somebody wanted to pay me like $30,000 to turn my art into NFTs. I just deleted that.
Oh yeah, that's a scam. Leave it alone.
But no, seriously, we're here to talk about Spirited Away.
Yeah, as promised. We never did make it to see it in the theater, but we watched it on my big screen TV, though.
Yes, true. I snorted just now. But
So, Spirited Away. Well, so we actually watched it a few days ago, and we're recording. Let's see, today's Monday. We watched it. What was it? Friday? I think it was Friday.
yeah,
Something like that. Oh no, Thursday. It was Thursday. So yeah,
I
we
have a
got.
confession to make.
Uh oh.
Up until we started the podcast, right before you pressed record, I forgot what we were reviewing tonight. It's like I don't know what we're reviewing tonight. We're gonna review something.
Well, at least I know. And guys, you can't see this because we're recording this on Zoom. But his shirt just says "I'll do it," so he was ready regardless. He's like, "I'll do it." Yeah, it's a I'll do it. What's it say on the bottom? I'll do it tomorrow or something. I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
tomorrow. There we go.
For some reason, Snoopy's on there. I don't know why. Is Snoopy a procrastinator?
He
I
is
don't.
now.
He is now.
I'd swear if I saw a shirt that was Snoopy that just said "I'll do it," I would figure it came out of China. But this is a Walmart shirt.
I'll do it tomorrow. Yeah, I don't know what the significance of that is in connection to peanuts. Which why is it called peanuts? By the way, do you have any idea? Because I don't.
Well, actually, I do. I do know why it's called Peanuts. Originally, Charles Schulz wanted to call it Little People, but his editor wouldn't let him do it. Told him it wasn't a good title. So he called it Peanuts, like a mixed bag of nuts.
Well, that is humanity, right? Mixed bag of nuts.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Now,
Okay.
I need to be fact checked, by the way, because there might be people out there that know more about this than I do, but that's briefly what I remember reading.
Okay. Excuse me. Well,
Matter of fact, I'm going to fact check myself right now.
oh well. I mean,
Well, it's not super important.
not that important. Of course, we did take like 2 minutes to talk about it. Well, while you're checking that, I'm gonna get us started on talking about Spirited Away. So, as always, or at least up to this point, if you want to read along with us, we are.
Oh, okay. Quick correction. Peanuts was a name for children at that time in the 40s.
Oh, like, hey, little peanut.
So that helps me understand the term peanut gallery now.
Okay, that does make, I guess, more sense.
Yeah, that
Well,
makes more sense.
Hey, y'all learned
I
something.
lied earlier.
He didn't lie. He just had faulty memory. There's a difference. All right. So, into Spirited Away. All right. We'll switch it around this time. I'm going to read the synopsis if you want to tackle the plot.
The plot.
So, as always, you can read along with this on Wikipedia. Spirited Away, in Japanese, Sen to Chihiro no Kamikakushi. I'm sure I said that wrong. Sen and Chihiro's Spiriting Away is a literal rendering. Is a 2001 Japanese animated fantasy film written and directed by Hayao Miyazaki, animated by Studio Ghibli for Tokumo Shoten, Nippon Television Network, Dentsu, Buena Vista Home Entertainment, Toho Kushinsha Film, and Mitsubishi, and distributed by Toho. The film features the voices of Rumi Hiragi, Miyu Irino, Mari Natsuki, Takeshi Naito, Yasuko Sawaguchi, Sunehiko Kamijo, Takehiko Ono, and Bunta Sugawara. And that's, of course, the Japanese version, which is the original, of course. Spirited Away tells the story of Chihiro Ogino, or Hiragi, a 10-year-old girl, voiced by Hiragi. A
We should
10-year-old,
make it all up and see if people know the difference.
I'm sorry?
We should just make up a synopsis and plot and see if people notice the difference. I'm kidding. Continue.
I'm pretty sure we'd get some anime fans who would be like, "What are you doing?" All right.
Yeah, it's too well known. They know the difference.
Of course, we're assuming that Wikipedia is accurate. um,
Dun
but
dun
yeah,
dun.
as I understand it, though, it is fact checked.
But I'm sorry.
Supposedly, it's more accurate than the Britannica and used to be back in the day. Supposedly,
I highly doubt Britannica would have had Spirited Away on it.
probably not. That's one cool
But
thing about
sorry.
Wikipedia. There's so many entries on it. It's pretty cool. It wouldn't surprise me if Dan Johnson has written something for Wikipedia at some point.
Wouldn't
That wouldn't.
surprise me at all. But I'm in a playful mood tonight. My apologies.
That's okay. We are the irreverent nerds, so it's okay to be a little playful, a little weird, a little inappropriate, and of course, a lot of nerdy. So, Spirited Away tells the story of Chihiro Ogino, a 10-year-old girl who, while moving to a new neighborhood, enters the world of kami, spirits of Japanese Shinto folklore. After her parents are turned into pigs by the witch Yubaba, Chihiro takes a job working in Yubaba's bathhouse to find a way to free herself and her parents and return to the human world. Miyazaki wrote the screenplay after he decided the film would be based on the 10-year-old daughter of his friend Seiji Okuda, the film's associate producer, who came to visit his house each summer. At the time, Miyazaki was developing two personal projects, but they were rejected. With a budget of US dollars 19 million, production of Spirited Away began in 2000. Pixar animator John Lasseter, a fan and friend of Miyazaki, convinced Walt Disney Pictures to buy the film's North American distribution rights and served as executive producer of its English dubbed version. Lasseter then hired Kirk Wise as director and Donald W. Ernst as producer, while screenwriters Cindy and Donald Hewitt wrote the English language dialogue to match the characters' original Japanese language lip movements. That has to be a hard job. Like,
Yeah.
very tedious, I would imagine. You have to be both creative and a good translator and just pay very close attention to lip movements. Let's see. Originally released in Japan on the 20th of July 2001 by distributor Toho, the film received universal acclaim, grossing $395.8 million at the worldwide box office. Pretty good return on its money, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Accordingly, it became the highest grossing film in Japanese history with a total of 31.68 billion yen, approximately $305 million in US money. It held the record for 19 years until it was surpassed by Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba, the movie Mugen Train, in 2020. Animes have some really long titles, by the way.
Yes, they do. Like whole sentences.
Yeah. A co-recipient of the Golden Bear with Bloody Sunday, whatever that is, at the 2002 Berlin International Film Festival, and the first and to date only hand-drawn and non-English language animated film to win the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature at the 75th Academy Awards. Spirited Away is regarded as one of the greatest films of all time and has been included in various best of lists. On to the plot.
On to the plot. Sorry for the hesitation. I was about to ask you a question, but we'll save that later for our review. I'm just wondering if, after watching Castle in the Sky, if Spirited Away still holds one of the greatest films of all time status with you. But like I said, we'll talk about that during the review.
Yes, we will. Yeah, when we get into what we think about the film and what we liked and didn't like.
10-year-old Chihiro Ogino. I don't think her family name Ogino is said at all in the English version.
Yeah, I can't remember.
And her parents are traveling to their new home. Her father stops to explore an abandoned amusement park despite Chihiro's protests. They find a restaurant stocked with food, which Chihiro's parents begin to eat. While exploring alone, Chihiro finds a bathhouse and meets a boy named Haku, who warns her to leave. However, Chihiro discovers that her parents have become pigs and the exit is blocked by an ocean of water.
Is it Chihiro or Chihiro? I'm trying to remember.
I don't know.
Chihiro? I was trying to remember where the emphasis was in the film. Is it Chihiro or Chihiro?
I'm having a hard time differentiating the difference between what you just said.
It's like the emphasis on Chihiro, or Chihiro. Anyway,
I don't know. That's
just where the accent falls. I can't remember. Anyway, sorry, that's me being nitpicky.
Well, I'm sure I'm butchering it either way.
Oh, I know I am.
Haku finds Chihiro and leads her toward the bathhouse. She sees several animals and creatures visiting the bathhouse, as well as No-Face, Kawanashi, a masked spirit. Haku instructs her to ask for a job from the bathhouse boiler man Kamaji, a yokai commanding the Susuwatari. Kamaji says that he already has enough Susuwatari to help him. After Chihiro tries to help but inadvertently causes some disruption, Kamaji asks a worker named Lin to send Chihiro to Yubaba, the witch who runs the bathhouse.
By the way, the Susuwatari are basically animated soot. Yeah, like he has put a spell on soot and turned it into little creatures.
Yeah, I'm not sure why the Wikipedia article gives us the Japanese name for the soot. But Yubaba tries to frighten Chihiro away, but Chihiro persists. Eventually, Yubaba reveals she took an oath to give work to anyone who asks for it and gives Chihiro a working contract. Yubaba takes away the second kanji of her name, renaming her Sin. Haku reveals he is also working for Yubaba. The bathhouse workers dislike Sin but give her work as Lin's assistant. Later that night, when Yubaba leaves, Haku finds Sin and shows her her parents, who are being held in pig pens. Haku explains that Yubaba controls people by taking their names. If she completely forgets hers like he once did, she will never be able to leave the spirit world. Sin is ostracized by the other workers. While working, she invites No-Face inside, accidentally believing him to be a customer. The spirit of a polluted river arrives as Sin's first customer. Sin discovers a bicycle handle sticking out of him, and the workers help to remove the bicycle and a large amount of garbage. He gives her a magic emetic dumpling as a token of gratitude. Meanwhile, No-Face imitates the gold left behind by the river spirit and tempts a worker with it before swallowing him. He demands food from the bathhouse and begins giving away extensive amounts of gold to its workers. Meanwhile, Sin sees Paper Shikigami, I understood that word, attacking a dragon and recognizes the dragon as Haku Metamorpho. When he crashes into Yubaba's penthouse with grievous injuries, Sin follows him upstairs. A Shikigami stows away on her back. No Face is given large amounts of food, but soon begins eating more workers. In the penthouse, the stowaway Shikigami, by the way, Shikigami is a piece of paper shaped like a bird in this anime. The Shikigami shapeshifts into Yubaba's sister Zenniba, who turns Yubaba's son Bo into a mouse. Sin, Haku, and Bo fall into the boiler room. Sin feeds Haku part of the emetic dumpling, causing him to vomit up a seal he stole, saving him from its deadly curse.
By the way, this is just to be clear, this is the type of seal that you would like seal a letter with, not like a living seal that barks. Just since you're not, in case you're not reading along with us and you can't see the spelling.
Yeah, he stole a circus seal. Yeah, swallowed it whole. Sin resolves to return the seal and apologize to Zenniba, taking Bo with her. She confronts an engorged No-Face, who reveals he is very lonely. Sin feeds No-Face the rest of the dumpling, and he follows Sin out of the bathhouse, steadily regurgitating everything that he has eaten. Lin takes Sin to the station to see Zenniba, and Sin invites No-Face to follow, despite Lin's protests. Sin, No-Face, and Bo travel with train tickets given to Sin by Kamaji. Meanwhile, Yubaba orders that Sin's parents be slaughtered, but Haku reveals that Bo is missing. Haku offers to retrieve Bo if Yubaba releases Sin and her parents. Yubaba agrees, but only if Sin can pass the final test. Sin meets with Zenniba, who makes her a magic hairband. Haku appears in dragon form, and Sin, Bo, and Haku leave for the bathhouse, leaving No-Face with Zenniba. Mid-flight, Sin discovers Haku's identity as the spirit of the Kohaku River. When they arrive, Sin passes Yubaba's test to identify her parents, and she is allowed to leave. Haku vows to see her again, but she leaves the city with her parents, who do not remember anything after the restaurant. After returning to their own world, the family find their car covered with leaves and dust. As the forest around it has become immensely overgrown, they then exit the forest to continue their journey to their new home. What do you think, Richard, was the purpose of the magic hairband?
I don't know. I'm not really sure. Like, I don't remember if Zenniba indicated, like, it just is like something, it almost just seemed like a gift, because there is a point at which later on, like after she's come home to the real world, I guess, left the spirit world, where the movie does like a zoom in on it and like just freezes there for a minute, like it's supposed to give it some kind of significance.
Yeah.
But it doesn't give any explanation for that I could see. So I don't know, honestly. I don't know what that was intended. Uh, Maybe that was meant to be an obscure reference to something, but if so, it wasn't one that I understood personally.
Yeah. Who knows?
Anyways,
Maybe it's exactly as you said, something to do with Japanese culture that we wouldn't understand.
could be, yeah. All right. So before we go into our review, we cover just a little bit of the English voice cast, because we of course watched the English dub. So Chihiro, I think it's Chihiro Ogino, or Sen, was voiced in English by Davy Chase.
Yeah.
Haku, or the spirit of the Kohaku River, was voiced by Jason Marsden. Yubaba and Zenniba were voiced by Suzanne Pleshette. Kamaji by David Ogden Steers. Lin by Susan Egan. Chichiyaku by Paul Ading. Aniyaku, the assistant manager, by John Ratzenberger. No Face by and Ayugeru by Bob Bergen. Bandai Geiru, the foreman, by Roger Bumpass.
Bumpass.
If you get on the dance floor and you get it moving, that's what happens. No. Bo the baby was voiced by Tara Strong. That's random. Uh,
Oh, really?
Aikio, yeah, apparently. Aikio Ogino,
I recognize that voice actress's name.
yeah. Chihiro's father was voiced by Michael Chiklis, uh, aka the Thing from the Fantastic Four movies. And Yuko Ogino was voiced by Lauren Holly, the River Spirit by Jim Ward, and the Radish Spirit by Jack Angel. And that's it for the English voice cast.
I think I also recognize Jason Marsden's name, but right now I just can't remember what else he's done. But I think he's definitely working for Disney.
He's done a lot. He's very prolific. Something I'm sure you've probably seen him in. He did the voice of Goofy's son in the Goofy movie. I know that for sure.
Oh,
Uh, I
right.
I remember seeing like a behind the scenes feature about that back in the 90s when it first came out. So I think he was also on Full House at some point as a guest,
Huh.
as a recurring guest star, I believe. I could be wrong about that, but I think so. Um, and yeah, he's done a lot of voice work over the years since then. I think that's been one of his main gigs is voice work. So I see his name pop up quite a bit.
Cool, 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 cool.
Well, I think we're going to go ahead and take a break, and then we'll get into our review of the film, what we thought of it, what we liked, what we didn't like, and our analysis, unqualified as it is.
This is
So
true.
we'll be back after these messages.
Bum,
We'll
bum, bum,
be right back.
bum, bum.
Nerds, we would like to hear from you. Yes, you. You can send us a voice message if you go to our Spotify for Podcasters profile. You can get there by going to irreverentnerds.com. There is a message button. You can click on that. You can leave us a voice message. If you do that, we will include it in next week's episode. You can also follow us on social media. Our Instagram handle is at irreverent_nerds. We are on Facebook simply as The Irreverent Nerds. YouTube, The Irreverent Nerds, once again. And that's it. Those are only places where you can find us at the present, beyond, of course, your podcast app. So, if you find us in one of those spots, please feel free to let us know what you think of our episodes, whether you like them, dislike them, you're ambivalent, whatever you want to say, give us your 2 cents. Thank you, nerds. Now back to this week's episode. And we're back. So, Mr. Boyer,
Mr. Best.
before we get into what we currently think of this film, do you recall your first experience with it and what you thought of it?
I'm not 100% certain when I saw Spirited Away. It could have been in the theater when it originally released. Maybe I saw it with my mom. I don't know why I'm remembering that. Or who knows? Who knows when it was initially? Um,
You would have
when
been
did it?
in high school at the time, I think.
Yeah, that
2001?
sounds about right. Or maybe I didn't see it with my mom. I just feel like I might have seen it in theaters. My mom went with me a few times to see a few movies, but I don't know. That sounds like desperate.
Uh-huh.
But only
No,
when my
nothing wrong with that. I've gone to see a few movies with my dad. Nothing wrong with
true.
that.
I guess I'm just picking, but yeah, you said 2001.
Well, it's when it released in Japan. I'm not sure when or if it had a theatrical run in the US. It doesn't spell out in the Wikipedia here unless I missed it. Uh, September 20th, 2002.
2002. Okay.
So, yes, you would have been what, a senior in high school?
Um, yeah, yeah, yeah. September 2002.
Okay.
That's a big month for me. Anyway, so I think I saw it in theaters, but I can't be 100% on that. Um, when did you first see it?
I don't think I saw it until I think I was already married. My wife and I watched it together, if I'm remembering correctly. So it's been within the last 8 years. I think the first time I saw it, and I had only watched it that one time until we reviewed it here. So yeah, I believe it's been within the last 8 years. I think she and I watched it together, if memory serves me.
Okay, I enjoy the film. It's not it's not one of my absolute favorite Miyazaki films. It's definitely good though. Sorry if I'm just jumping into it.
Yeah, no, no. I mean, that's what the we're reviewing it, so we're talking about
Yeah,
what we liked about it, what we didn't like about it.
I'm not sure if we were ready for me to just jump into it, but um,
Well, I think I asked you about your initial impression, and
right.
in my like I remember enjoying it the first time around, and just I believe I think the first Miyazaki film I saw was Howl's Moving Castle, and I think I had seen that with my sisters prior to seeing Spirited Away, I believe. So I remember seeing it on the shelves in like videos, anywhere that had like videos for sale or the library, or in the video section. I remember seeing the cover so many different places over the years. So I was aware of it, but just never had gotten around to seeing it. But I do believe, because I think Howl's Moving Castle is my sister Catherine's favorite Miyazaki film, if I'm not mistaken. I believe I had seen that
Okay.
first, and then so Spirited Away was the second Miyazaki slash Studio Ghibli film that I had ever seen. And yeah, I think I do remember enjoying it. There is he is very good. He and his team are very good at transporting you to another world, and it's one that's just a little bit off, from our world, just a little bit different. Obviously, in this case, it's the spirit world, but it has elements of our world, there's something that's always a bit off. Whether it's the Boiler Man, who has what, four legs that also stretch like Captain Fantastic. Just like a
Yeah,
creepy Captain Fantastic Spider-Man. Some
Mr. Fantastic.
Mr. Fan. Yeah, you're right, Mr. Fantastic. Sorry, Captain Fantastic. That's probably
Who's that?
some other comic book property, probably like Captain Marvel versus, was it Shazam, aka Mr. Marvel, or whatever. I don't know. The Marvel. Who knows? Oh, whatever. Anyway, but no, I do remember enjoying it, and yeah, like I think at the time, I think I liked Howl's Moving. Well, actually, I don't know. I enjoyed both of them, but I want to say, I think prior to us covering the films for the podcast here in these last few months, I don't think I had ever seen another, maybe one other Miyazaki film besides those two prior to this year. So yeah, I didn't grow up seeing a lot of them, which apparently they weren't really released in the U.S. while I was growing up. So that obviously that's part of it. But anyway, yeah. So this time around, how would you rate it now? Like, I mean, nerd hats would you give it, and what's your overall feeling on it at this point?
Well, I can't explain to you why um I have this it's like I enjoy the film, but it's never been a favorite of mine, and I can't explain why that is. But I am giving it a four nerd hats out of five, because it is a very good film.
Yeah, it's well done and beautiful, as are all Miyazaki's films. I think I think I would give it a 3.75. I think
Okay,
it's not good enough to get a four in my book, but it's definitely above average, as are most of Miyazaki's films. Um, I'm trying to recall. I think last week I gave Castle in the Sky what it 4.5, I think. So this is definitely not as high as that in my book. I'm going to say 3.75. So not quite a
Okay.
4, but close. Yeah, also like you, it's hard to put a finger on it, but it is not my favorite Miyazaki film either. Um I don't yeah, I'm not entirely sure why. Like maybe the stakes are not as big. I don't know if that has something to do with it,
That's true. That's true.
because that is something like Castle in the Sky and Nausicaa and Princess Mononoke. Like all three of those grab you because the stakes are higher than just one individual or that individual's family. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe it just doesn't carry the same emotional weight. Because there you had stakes that were both personal and not cosmic, but definitely bigger than one individual or one person's family. Whereas this is very personal, a much smaller film in that sense of like it's just centered around the main character and her efforts to get back to the real world, so to speak, to get out of the spirit world and to bring her parents with her. So it is more. It's a smaller story in that sense. So I don't know if that has something to do with it, but I think it's magical. This may be something. Maybe some of it is just the the fact that the entire story takes place basically just in the bathhouse for the most part,
Yeah.
with the exception of when she goes to see Zeniba. The entire story takes place, for the most like 80% of it, 80-90% of it in the bathhouse, and that might be part of it. Just a smaller scope, smaller setting. So I think the spirit world doesn't get fleshed out as much. You know, um, it's more in it. So maybe that's part of where it wasn't as interesting to me. There's like less to explore, to less, in a sense, like whereas with Nausicaa or with Castle in the Sky, you get a much broader picture of the world, even Princess Mononoke as well,
Right.
of the world, the broader world. But I guess this one though, like it begins in just I guess what would be normal Japan, basically, more or less, and then they get transported to the spirit world, but then they're just in the bathhouse. So maybe that's part of the reason why it didn't doesn't grab me as much, is that the scope is a little bit narrower and the stakes are a little bit lower.
You probably hit it on the nose. I feel like you have.
Yeah, I think even Hell's Moving Castle is definitely it's like commentary on war and things like that. And you don't see as much of that. You don't see as much as the philosophical, commentary in this as you do in some of Miyazaki's other films. More than perhaps Kiki's Delivery Service, but certainly less than the other three, like Mononoke, Nausicaa, and Castle in the Sky. But yeah, but it's still beautifully done, well acted. Like the English dub was well done. John Lasseter obviously knows his stuff, so he chose wisely with who would run that ship, so to speak, on the English side, on the Disney side, if you will. Um, yeah, I enjoyed the vocal performances were well done, and yeah, I think the pacing of the movie was good, and obviously
Yeah.
the visuals are gorgeous. But yeah, not as many like sweeping like vistas or like maybe that's part of why it wasn't as magical either. Is like most of it again is inside the bathhouse,
Yeah.
so you don't get the sweeping shots of nature or other creatures to the same extent that you do in some other films. Even Kiki's Delivery Service maybe had more of that. You could say this has some of it, like with the ocean and then travel to Zaniba. So you get a little bit of that, and that might have been some of the parts of the film I enjoyed the most. Um, but yeah, once again, I think the limited scope, just for me at least, translated to a little bit less enjoyment of the film.
Yes, I guess I felt like putting her in the bathhouse, her, even though it's the spirit world and she doesn't actually care about making money. It's basically a job. So we've reduced the spirit world to the mundane, basically. Um, we're translating the spirit world with the eyes of a human being who it's a very mundane, very day to day kind of situation, kind of scenario. I much more enjoyed when Haku is being attacked by the Shinsengumi, the paper birds. That had a lot of action. It had more um weight to it, more sense of what's the word I'm looking for? A sense of gravity or something. You used the word earlier. I just can't remember the word, but
Bigger stakes.
yes, exactly. Um, and maybe that's a part of why it's not our favorite Miyazaki film. Um, maybe the bathhouse is just rather day to day, mundane kind of workplace. I mean, it was certainly interesting. I like the part where they rescue the river god, um, or the other river dragon, um, that's been polluted by the garbage. I like that scene, but yeah, I definitely like uh, what was his name, Kamaji. I definitely like him. And, hey, didn't you say that Kamaji represents somebody?
Yeah, I think it was on the documentary I was watching. Miyazaki talked about how he at times would put himself either versions of himself or quite deliberately he would choose a character that kind of was like a representation of himself within the film, and apparently in Spirited Away that was Himaji, kind of this old curmudgeon, so to speak, who at first seems hard and focused on his work, just constantly working, but then has empathy and compassion at the end of the day for other people and helps. So maybe that's how Miyazaki viewed himself on some levels, that he was very focused on his work, just like working, work and sleep. That does seem to be a lot what his life was like. And he probably comes off rough and gruff, at first with many people that he works with, but then, and that seems to come out in his films, that there's a deep well of compassion and empathy, and desire for justice as well that comes out of Miyazaki. So I think maybe that's a pretty good representation of him. I feel like with him Himaji and so yeah, you'll see a character, and I don't know if the mustache is a clue, like because you see that same type of mustache in Castle in the Sky with the guy that's running the engine on the pirate ship, the husband, I guess,
Right.
and he has the same mustache and kind of a similar face. So I don't know if he was also supposed to kind of be Miyazaki, just like he's running the ship, running the engine, so to speak, but he's not necessarily the flashy woman out there leading the charge, so to speak. In that case, um, so if I had to guess, that was probably maybe the character that he saw himself in, or channeled a bit of. Obviously, anytime you create characters, you're going to channeling some of yourself into them, even when it's a 10-year-old girl, to some extent. But yeah, my understanding is that Hamaji was more specifically like maybe his vision of himself in some way, like inserting himself a little bit into his story, which is kind of cool. I kind of like that. It seems to be a good fit. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm sorry. My ADHD kicked in. I started daydreaming about what characters I see myself as in my own work.
Okay.
What was the question?
Oh, well, I was just I guess I was just wondering what you thought of Himaji as like a representation of Miyazaki, like based on what you know of Miyazaki.
Well, I don't know a lot about Miyazaki. I still haven't watched the documentary that you watched. But from what you told me, he was a workaholic. So that much fits him in the Kamaji character.
I feel like this would be a good spot to read a little bit. This is also from the Wikipedia, but about the development
Yeah.
and inspiration for this film. So, in Miyazaki's words himself, speaking of uh, of Chihiro, which it is Chihiro. I just watched a little bit of the movie. I've actually got it playing in the background here, but it's Chihiro. So it was we were saying it correctly. Um, all right. So Miyazaki says of Chihiro, I created a heroine who is an ordinary girl, someone with whom the audience can sympathize. It's not a story in which the characters grow up, but a story in which they draw on something already inside them, brought out by the particular circumstances. I want my young friends to live like that, and I think they too have such a wish.
Okay. Cool,
So
cool, cool.
apparently, again, according to this article, every summer Hayao Miyazaki spent his vacation at a mountain cabin with his family and five girls who were friends of the family. The idea for Spirited Away came about when he wanted to make a film for these friends. Miyazaki had previously directed films for small children and teenagers, such as My Neighbor Totoro and Kiki's Delivery Service, but he had not created a film for 10-year-old girls. For inspiration, he read shoujo manga magazines like Nakayoshi and Ribbon. The girls had left the cabin, but felt they only offered subjects on crushes and romance. When looking at his young friends, Miyazaki felt that this was not what they, quote, held dear in their hearts, unquote, and decided to produce the film about a young heroine whom they could look up to instead.
Okay.
So yeah, that seems to be in line with much of his work. Like Kiki's Delivery Service, has a young heroine in whom you can look up to who draws on and you know internal strength. She gets help from other people, absolutely for sure as well. But as just a 13-year-old going out to live on her own for a year, I mean that's a frightening thing. So she also has to draw on internal reserves. But she of course has companions like her cat, and then she has friends who help her in the new city as well. But there is an internal strength there that you see even at a young age, and that seems to be something that he looks back on. I think he had a relatively hard childhood and kind of had to grow up a little faster than one normally might, and learn how to work hard and things like that. And it seems like he had a nostalgia for that period of his own life, and kind of reflects that in some of his younger characters. Just the idea of like the need for working hard. Which I think there needs to be the work life balance, but I think that that general ethic is a good thing, and of course, as it plays out in caring for other people and working to help other people, working hard to help others, that's certainly noble, I think.
Yes.
So, how do you feel about the aesthetic elements of the film, like the animation, the cinematography, if you will?
Well,
The
it was definitely very good. What were you going to say?
How would you compare it to some of the other Miyazaki films?
Hmm. I'm not really sure how to answer that question. I mean, I definitely think I'm not qualified, as you said earlier in our episode.
Our
Uh,
unqualified opinion.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
we're
more.
not expert film critics by any stretch of the
Uh,
imagination.
no, I don't even know how to answer that question. It definitely has a lot of good shots. when she's running down the steps that are collapsing behind her comes to mind. Um, is a good shot. Uh, there are several different perspectives they could have animated her from. You know, kind of like a perspective where the camera might be in a live action film. I think they made the best choice in where to quote unquote film her from. Um, look at me trying to BS my way through this.
Hey, what, you're just talking about what you notice, like, because yeah, you do notice things like camera, because camera angle is a thing. Like when you're deciding how to compose a shot, even if you're hand drawing it, you're still deciding on the composition, like how you frame it, where you place the character within the frame, what perspective you're looking at the character from. I mean, you do that in your comic book work, right? Like,
Yeah,
so, and that makes a difference. Like, and it can affect even how you feel about a character in a given scene. If you're looking up at them, if you're looking down on them, if you're the same level as them, things like that. Um,
absolutely. And I'm lazy. I normally do the most laziest way I can, just because like a bird's eye view is very difficult to draw. I can do a worm eye view pretty good, I think, but the bird eye view, I think that perspective is a little hard for me. But yeah, it definitely changes the way you feel about the characters. A worm eye view, for example, will make the characters feel more imposing, bigger than life. A bird eye view might make the characters feel a bit distant, like you're eavesdropping on them from a higher level.
yeah, and
I mean,
another way you could look. I know you said it was lazy, but you could also look at that as efficient.
oh right, right.
You
Well,
know what I
I
mean?
was
Like it's like
going,
it takes you less time to draw it from a different perspective. So I mean that's a reality too. When making
yeah,
films, is like sometimes you have to do the most expedient thing because of your time constraints or your budget or just your energy reserves too. I mean, quite literally.
yeah. Like earlier today, I during a slow period at work, I was drawing one of my comics, and uh, I was definitely doing. I'm not sure what to call it, just a normal perspective, not worm's eye view, not bird eye view. We're just halfway in the middle. Um, it's not the most interesting perspective, but it gets the job done.
I will say, commenting on the aesthetics of Spirited Away, and I've got it actually playing in the background, so I was looking at it while you were talking there.
Ah,
There is one thing I did like about how they portray the spirit realm is that there's kind of that uncanny valley kind of feeling, like the characters, like even the ones that are more human like Lynn, for instance, who's not supposedly not a human. There's just some things about them that are just a little bit off, or even some of the female characters that are working there in the bathhouse. Their heads are a little bit taller, their eyes are shaped a little bit weirdly. It's a little off. It's like, oh, they're not quite human. Like they're reminiscent of human. They they evoke that, but they're not as well at the same time. Or like the anthropomorphic frog characters, they evoke both a person and a frog. And then you have some that are just more outlandish and almost grotesque, like the giant radish sumo wrestler. I just saw, it's like radish man, or even the two, the head of the bathhouse, Baba. She's just this massive old woman head, with a giant wart in the middle of her forehead. So that seems to be something that you see in a number of Miyazaki films, like this, like it's bordering on grotesque, but somehow is also just grabs you and is intriguing as well. Like you almost want to look away, but it still pulls you in, you know. uh he seems to play with that line a lot. I don't know if that's intentional, in the sense of like he's trying to evoke a little bit of like revulsion at the same time that there's beauty, like a mixture of the two. Like maybe that's almost like a and it might be very conscious choice on his part, but like a portrayal of both the complexity of the world, perhaps in some sense of like there's this beauty and there's ugliness, and sometimes it's subjective, and there's outward beauty and ugliness, but then there's how you actually treat people as well, of course. Some of the more frightening, what you might call ugly characters, like Imaji, a little more frightening, not necessarily ugly, but creepy, definitely creepy. There's a creepiness factor there, and yet he's turns out to be one of the kindest characters. So it's interesting. Um, but yeah, but he doesn't rely on just a simple like, oh, well, then the beautiful ones are therefore the untrustworthy either, because you have Lynn, who basically looks human and she is beautiful, but she does, I guess, her personality. She does initially come off as a bit of a, you know, as rough and then turns out to, have a soft center, I guess, to be actually kind to Chihiro.
with
Uh,
soft
but
notes there.
but outwardly is beautiful, So he he kind of plays around with that too, which I like.
Speaking of Lynn, what's up with that pickled dry gecko on a stick or whatever it was?
Oh yeah, the roasted newt.
Yeah, roasted newt. That's it.
I guess it's a delicacy in the bathhouse. I guess 'cause that frog sure as hell wanted some. He's like, can I have just a tail? It's like okay, dude, okay. But yeah, it's apparently some kind of delicacy. Um, so I guess Himaji using that as payment was an indication also of his willingness to help Chihiro, like to give up something that was so prized, I guess, to help her. So that's pretty cool.
Right.
Well, we're coming up. We got about 7 minutes left here in our episode. Uh, what are some final thoughts on this film? Anything you wanted to share before we close out?
Uh, well, before we close up, I will say this. I just found this on the internet, on Reddit. Uh, 7 years ago, user Brownsky says apparently it's an aphrodisiac. The herb valerian, noted for its stimulant properties at lower doses, was long a brothel favorite, and Yujo, professional women of pleasure in feudal Japan, supplemented their charms with the aphrodisiacal powers of eels, lotus root, and charred newts.
Interesting. Okay. Okay.
And they quoted that from encyclopedia.com, philosophy and religion, uh, aphrodisiacs.
There
I'm
were
not
some
going
characters.
to.
Lynn was not one of them because she just cleans things, but there were some characters. And this seemed to be a recurring theme in some, at least it's recurred in a few Miyazaki films, but such as Princess Mononoke. They're more integral characters for sure. But there were some characters early on when Chihiro first enters the bathhouse and is walking through that looked like they might be, uh, I guess, spirit prostitutes, for lack of a better term.
Yeah,
They kind of acted like it and were dressed similarly to the women in Princess Mononoke who were like former prostitutes but had been recruited, I guess, for a more noble work, so to speak. Um, and that's not to bash sex workers. Like I know there are some people who do that for a living, and it's something they have chosen that they enjoy doing. Um, but yeah, the common cultural perspective, I guess, at least in our country, is kind of looked down upon in general, either as like something someone would do out of desperation or just something evil in some sense. Um, and it can be both of those things. I'm not saying that, but yeah, it's more complicated than that, as are most things in life. Anyway, it's beside the point. But those type of characters do seem to pop up from time to time in Miyazaki's films. Um, Again, most prominently from what I've seen in Princess Mononoke.
Right.
Well, let's see. Our last 4 minutes here. I think just reflecting on. I like Chihiro's journey. I do like the tests that she has to go through. Now she passes them with flying colors, and the no face character is interesting. Is like he seems very simple at first, like he just likes Chihiro and wants to help her, it seems, but then he turns like greedy and violent, like something about the bathhouse like makes him go crazy. But then he gets but then she helps him and treats him with compassion. I'm assuming it's a him. It's a spirit anyway, no face, and eventually gets him out of there, and that seems to help him. And then he ends up working with Zanaba, who turns out to be a very kind character. Like you're not sure at first. She seems cruel at first, but then turns out it seems to be very kind.
Right. There's definitely a lot on the Wikipedia under uh,
Zeniba. I've been saying her name incorrectly. It's Zeniba.
uh, the I wonder if the no face, his going crazy, has something to do with a message about Western consumerism or something. I'm not sure. I haven't read everything under themes here on the Wikipedia page yet.
It could
Uh,
be. It could be. Like there definitely it definitely seems to hit on greed on some levels. Like and he was for a time he was treated very well because he was giving so much gold, but then he started eating the workers. I mean that's that'll do it every time, you know what I mean? It's like you sir are no longer welcome here. Not while you're eating our workers.
yeah.
Oh, well, we're coming up on the 2 minute warning here. So once again, so you gave this a 4 nerd hats out of 5. I gave it a 3.75, so we're both pretty close in our rating. Uh, recommend it obviously as I would so far any Miyazaki film I've seen. But yeah, not in my top 3. That's still I think at this point still Mononoke, Nausicaa, and Spirit or not Spirit Away, excuse me, Castle in the Sky are still my top 3 at this point.
Probably my top three as well. But you know what? We're not going to cover this film, but Ponyo is definitely my lowest.
Yeah, somehow that doesn't surprise me. I have not seen it yet, but yeah, they tried something very different with that, from what I understand, from what they normally did, and I don't think it was as successful as some of their others.
Oh, okay.
Well, nerds, this concludes Miyazaki month. So next week we're gonna kick off. Is it next week? Yeah, I guess. Yeah, next week. Wait. Oh, hold on. Let me look at the calendar here just to make sure I'm getting my dates right. Actually, we have a fifth Wednesday. So that throws it off. So we got to figure out what that's going to be. So actually, we might take a week off. Possibly. We got to figure it out. Anyway,
Okay. Okay.
coming up soon is going to be The Simpsons. So that's our next scheduled topic. We got to figure out what we're going to do next week because I missed that once again, 5 Wednesdays in a month.
Well, actually, I had a plan for next week. There is a Miyazaki film about raccoon dogs.
Oh yeah, Pumpoko.
Balls.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll see. Until next time, nerds.
Okay.
Live long and prosper.
Sayonara.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Irreverent Nerds podcast. If you would, consider following us on Instagram. We are there at irreverent_nerds. You can also hit us up on Facebook. Just look us up there at the Irreverent Nerds. That's our fan page. We have a YouTube channel as well. Once again, The Irreverent Nerds. Nice and simple, right? And if you go to www.irreverentnerds.com, that will send you to our Podcasters for Spotify, formerly Anchor.fm profile, where you can send us a voice message if you want to, support us financially, or listen to the podcast. It will also direct you to other places you can listen, like Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, you name it. So, like, comment, subscribe, follow, all those good things, wherever you find us, wherever you listen to us. We would greatly appreciate it. Until next time, nerds, live long and prosper. Avengers assemble! I'm Batman.